gonna go. It's gonna load. You are live. Okay, cool. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Den. Today we got a pretty awesome live. I'm coining it the sad batch on bad batch. And if you guys don't know, I mean, how could you know? I guess we have a group chat called the Sad Batch, and one day, sometime in the future, maybe soon, we're gonna be cosplaying the Bad Batch. So that's kind of why we call ourselves the Sad Batch. And hopefully Nick pops in. He said he's about 15 minutes away. He was having some computer issues, so Nick will be here. But I got Sarah and Wes with me. And before we get into it, I did want to say quick little. Let me see if I can. Which one am I clicking? Quick little sponsor myself. I'm doing 10% off all Star Wars items. That's mini kits, megaphone blasters, lightsabers. We got logos and all that stuff. So you get 10% off all of that. Auto applies at checkout. And then I also have some files as well, and you can get 20% off that till the 11th. So I just wanted to plug that real quick. Got a lot of awesome stuff on here. Feel free to email me or message me if you have any questions. But with that, let's get kind of into it. Well, I guess before we get into it, I'm going to derail us one more time. And I want to know what you guys, because both you guys went to see Phantom Menace real quick while we're giving Nick a little time to get here. Tell me about your Phantom Menace experience.
Sarah, you go first.
Okay. Oh my gosh. It was, I mean, obviously it wasn't to the hype levels of when it originally came out, but you could still feel the excitement in the room of the Phantom Menace and just Star Wars fans in general. And I went with my older brother, who pretty much is the reason why I got into Star Wars. He like introduced me to all the films and everything. So when we first walked in, we were like the only, I kid you not, we were the only ones with like Star Wars shirts. I had the Padme's Chapor snippet and everything. And there was just like regular people going in, and they're probably looking at us like, oh, these dorks. It was one heck of an experience. Even though I've seen this film like 100 times, like on my TV at home, there was nothing like it seeing it on the big screen. I felt like I was witnessing something for the first time, and just hearing the lightsaber sound effects, the ships, and I noticed a lot of details, just very small ones that I never noticed before, seeing it compared to like at home. And I just loved it so much. Even like when the main titles were coming up, like my theater just started cheering, and I was like, this is so cool. And oh my gosh, there was these two little boys next to me, and I just loved hearing their commentary more than actually watching the movie, because they were like, you know, it was like just trippy to me to see like it's still being passed down from generation to generation, and just kind of seeing it through their eyes. They're like, oh, it's so cool, and like Obi-Wan and Jar Jar, like just little things like that. It was just so awesome to see, because I mean, we were all there at some point, and we're, you know, young adults now watching these films on the big screen. But it was just, oh my gosh, it was just amazing. I loved it. Even when the credits rolled up, everyone just started clapping and cheering, and I was like, it's so nice to know that there's still an appreciation for this film, because it was so heavily hated on back in the day, and I don't understand why to this day. But it's just nice to know that Star Wars is still alive, and there's still so many passionate fans out there who love it just as much as we do. I loved it, from the cinematography to the music, especially hearing Duel of the Fates on the screen. I just like lost it. Like I was just like, whoa. Like,
yeah, Sammy was talking about the pod racing, and that was what got me. Sebulba's like freaking
what's up, Sam?
or whatever. It's like dun 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 dun, you know, right behind. I was just like getting like blasted with the volume. It was epic.
My seat was like vibrating. I was like, dang, like, am I on a ride or am I watching a movie right now? This is crazy.
Now that I think about it, I don't think it was in 4D, but that would have been sick to have like a 4D experience with like it shaking and stuff like that. That would have been pretty sick. But Wes, what about you?
When they go in Gungan City, you just get like a bucket of water poured on your head.
We go underwater now. Okie day sploosh.
Yeah, I mean, piggybacking off of Sarah's, there's just like I posted, like, because we had a group of us that went, and like there are a few feelings that compare to seeing Star Wars in the theaters. Like it is just something special, and it doesn't feel the same way that it does when you watch it at home. Like, you know, seeing Phantom Menace, seeing all the Star Wars movies multiple times, you know, Revenge of the Sith is like literally countless for me, the amount of times I've seen that movie, and it's not even my favorite. And so like, you know, but seeing it on the big screen, you know, feeling the vibration like in the chair from the pod racers and Duel of the Fates. And I mean, it is just, it's a whole other ball game, man. It's just something completely different. And yeah, it was amazing. It was amazing. My only complaint is I'm someone who like maxes out the volume on just about everything. I still would have made it louder personally. But, yeah.
Heck yeah, for sure.
Nah, I agree on that one. There were some scenes where I was like, nah, just turn it up just a little bit, just a little.
Just the theater just turns into a sauna.
We're all just sweating coming out of it.
I actually did notice something about the Phantom Menace that I had never noticed before. And at the very end of the credits, because we stayed and waited for the Acolyte special look and everything. And at the very end of the credits, you can hear Darth Vader breathing.
Yeah, I never noticed that either.
I did not know that was ever in there. And so that kind of blew my mind. I was like, what? And then the Acolyte looks incredible. In my opinion, I am very excited to see that show.
I have a feeling the combat's gonna be like really well done, just from like the little snippets that we've got of it, and also to like the amount of creature. I'm like a big nerd for those creatures, man. Having more like aliens and different species, and it looks like there's gonna be a ton of that in there. So I'm pretty excited for that. I'm hoping it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good.
No, I'm ready for Acolyte. It looks really intriguing, and the casting looks very well done. I'm excited. I will say, after seeing Phantom Menace and then watching Acolyte, I'm like, wow, I really want a lightsaber
there
now.
He is.
Hello.
You made it.
We haven't even gotten into Bad Batch. I kind of derailed us because I was talking about the
Perfect.
Phantom Menace. I wanted to hear everybody's thoughts on their Phantom Menace experience. So if you want to share yours, you can go for it too, because I know you went to go.
Yeah, Wes and we went together. It was a lot of fun. I mean, I remember seeing it. Well, not remember, but I saw it a long time ago in theaters when I was like 8 or 10. Definitely don't remember it, so it was kind of like a first time experience for sure in theaters. Yeah, I enjoyed it, and the little sneak peek of Acolyte at the end too. I enjoyed it. It was fun.
Nice. Yeah, we were actually just talking about Acolyte. How are you feeling about it?
I'm excited. I feel like there's just not enough information for me to be not excited. I feel like there's just little snippets we've got from trailers and stuff. Yeah, it just keeping me excited.
I don't know. I think that's what's really reeling me in for Acolyte, because I think Star Wars, and I mean, not with everything, but just a lot of movies nowadays just give away way too much in the trailer. And the hook for Acolyte being, this is a dark side story from a dark side perspective, and there's a dark sider killing Jedi, and the Jedi want to know who it is. Like, to me, like, I'm in, like, I'm sold. Like, that sounds awesome. Mm-hmm. And everything that they've shown in the trailers, you know, just little snippets of Jedi on the hunt doing detective work, you know, like very reminiscent of Obi-Wan in episode 2. Like, he's just looking for artifacts, trying to find the clues. And I don't know, man. I am stoked.
Yeah, I'm really excited for the roundtables too, because I think we're going to be doing some more roundtables for that. So that'll be cool. I hope you guys can pop in on those and stuff like that too.
Yeah,
gets through some of these messages. Appreciate all you guys in the chat for talking and hanging out with us. They need to opt for more theaters for the re-release. I think they will, dude. The Phantom Menace like brought in bank for them, so I really do think like because we'll probably get episode 2 and episode 3 at some point. So I feel like it's gonna really opt in for more theaters showing it, because they made I think it was like, I want to say it was like 280 million or something like that. It was something crazy domestic for I don't know if it was shown internationally. Maybe it was. I don't know if you guys know that or not.
I don't think it was that high.
I saw an 8 somewhere.
Yeah, I think it was 8 million.
Okay, maybe I'm just like tripping then. I don't know why I saw like 200. And maybe I saw like 208, and I was just maybe I saw 8, and I just added 20 or something.
Yeah,
like
it was
that.
it was second
dyslexia
in
popping
the it was second in the box office at 8 million. I think maybe that's where you got the 2 and the 8 from.
Yeah.
Which is still like
still wild, like
record numbers for re-release. Like
yeah.
that's crazy,
There were
especially
some-
for like a Star Wars movie that's not even like widely beloved. You know?
Yeah. I
There
would
were
say that
some-
one has. No, go ahead.
I was no, keep going because I was going to kind of change the subject a bit.
No, I was just saying, yeah, like out of the prequels, I think that one's probably loved the least. Was what I was going to say. So like, I can't even imagine like what the numbers would be for like Attack of the Clones or like Revenge of the Sith or something like that.
Revenge of the Sith, my God, yeah.
Sky high.
There were some
anything-
theaters.
I was gonna say anything with Hayden Christensen in it is gonna bring in the crowds.
Yeah.
So,
There were some theaters that were showing all 9 like back to back,
Yeah.
and if you wanted to, you could just literally spend like 20 plus hours in the theater. I'm pretty sure.
Please, I need that. Need that in my life. What's going on, the Stanleys? Appreciate you popping in. You're an OG, man. You're always popping in. You're always popping in and on all the streams. I really appreciate you. They didn't do the original trilogy either, so I don't know. Yeah, no, they just did Return of the Jedi. Like, wasn't it last year?
mhm.
Yeah.
They were showing, but maybe you mean like in some places. I'm not sure. But yeah, Return of the Jedi was also super sick.
Yeah, they're doing the same thing for the Sony's doing the same thing to make all their money back on Madam Web. Excuse me. And they put it's called Spider Mondays, and they're putting all the Spider-Man movies like back in theaters.
That's sick.
That's cool.
So tomorrow night I'm driving to Tampa to go see TASM.
Nice. Nice. Very cool.
There's been so many re-releases lately. Like my friend and I, we went to go see Alien the other night. That was great in theaters. They're doing the Lord of the Rings trilogy really soon, which I'm excited for.
Nice.
Do you know which one? Is it the extended or is it just the regular?
Ooh, I bet the regular.
I think it's
but that's
extended.
Oh, is it?
I'm pretty sure it's extended.
Yeah,
Oh,
not to go down
definitely.
another rabbit hole, but I've only seen the first one in the extended cut. And I was just like, oh my God, they add so much more to the extended cut. I was like, you get like a whole different, like, at least for me, not being like, I mean, I like Lord of the Rings, but I'm not like as into it as Star Wars. It's like, that gives you so much more perspective on like the world and stuff like that than like just the standard edition one.
Yeah, the first time I watched Lord of the Rings, I did it with the extended version. So then when I watched, I had my sister and my mother watch it, and they didn't want to sit there for like 3 hours. So then I was like, okay, fine, just watch the normal cut. And I'm just like, wait, I'm missing stuff here. I feel like there's information that you guys needed.
Yeah. I'm excited to go back in because like, what does it add? Like another hour or something like that to each one or something like
4 hours total.
Yeah.
Yeah, they go from like 3 to 4 hours, which is just
Love it.
Yeah, I'm here for it. I'm here for it. But yeah, let's get into Bad Batch. I've derailed us for what, like almost 15 minutes now with talking about Phantom Menace and all that stuff. How are we feeling now that Bad Batch is kind of, at least as far as we know, have closed the chapter of the story of the Bad Batch? How are you guys feeling on the series like as a whole? And if anybody's ready, or we can go like down the line.
yeah, I'll go first, I guess. I think it's great. For me, Clone Wars is still number one. Then you got Rebels right here, and then Bad Batch is kind of like floating right there. I love all three, but for me, Bad Batch just didn't beat out Rebels. Just because Rebels is just great. It's just a great show. That's no fault of Bad Batch, but I don't know. I thought this show did some really interesting things, tonally, narratively, and I really enjoyed all the characters. There were no characters throughout the entire show that I was like, this guy again. So I just had a really good time, and honestly, like I can't believe it's over. And yeah, I'm gonna miss it.
Right on, man. Right on. Sarah, Nick, what What you guys thinking?
Oh my gosh. There's so much to say about this series. Considering we've only had it for 3 seasons, it feels like we have had it for so much longer than that. And I have absolutely enjoyed getting to know these characters and see them be built up from the first season compared to where they're kind of at in the end. And I feel like the way they closed it out was just so beautifully done. And I don't feel like it was overly cheesy or too like sad. Like it was a very bittersweet ending. I mean, we all knew it had to come to an end at some point. I just didn't know how they were going to do it. It is probably a little bit lower on the rankings, kind of same as Wes, that Clone Wars will forever be top tier for me. And
yeah, it's hard to beat Clone Wars, man. Clone Wars is just it's something special, man.
I mean, even though it's kind of somewhat in the same era, just like a couple years after the aftermath of Clone Wars, it was nice to get that different perspective kind of for the first time, because that's where I had a lot of questions as a kid, was the aftermath of Order 66 and how did Kamino go down? What happened to the clones? Like, and it was very interesting to kind of see these rogue clones just kind of rebel against the Empire and kind of just try to do their own thing and do whatever it takes to survive, and just have all these odds pinned against them as the Empire was pretty much starting to rise in the height of their power. I thought every character had enough time to be spread out and talked about. It's just, I'm trying to wrap my brain around this. It's a lot to sink in, but I just will miss these guys genuinely so much. And I didn't realize how attached I was to them until it was finally over. And even though we lose a member along the way, and then we had some moments where I thought some of the other ones were going to die, which I'm thankful they didn't. But I love Omega, Tech, Echo, and Hunter, Wrecker.
Corsair, Wrecker.
Yeah, maybe I should just start talking an Omega accent.
You're the Omega of the group.
Yeah, start getting used to it.
I'm the Omega of this Bad Batch or Sad Batch. Oh gosh. But yeah, I love these characters so much, and I will just miss them so much now that it's finally over. I hope there's more for Omega in the future, but we shall definitely see.
For me, I just think I don't know if you all remember, but on YouTube a long time ago, before they announced season 7 was coming back, the unreleased footage of the Bad Batch from, I guess they were originally going to be in season 6, but my friends and I used to watch those like all the time, the unfinished episodes, and the Bad Batch ones were always just amazing to us.
Yeah, weren't they on like a Sheik or something? Like it was something like that, wasn't it, or no?
No, it was basically the exact same thing we got in season 7 with like them going to retrieve Echo. It was basically the same thing. They just finished it and moved it to season 7. But we would always watch that. We would always watch that. And then when they finally confirmed that they were going to be in season 7, we were just like, what? No way. They're like canon now. And then after that, it was like a show. And so we were even more excited. And I just kind of wish we had more time with them, but I'm glad it's like they had a start and an end. They're not trying to like overproduce a piece of media. So I'm glad we got like a definitive ending, I guess. But I hope to see, like Sarah said, more Omega in the future.
Yeah, one thing I will add to that is, so I really enjoyed Mando's season 1 and 2. 3 was a little bit lesser for me, and it's not because I feel like they're trying to overproduce Mando and Grogu, but it gives off that feeling, and it's almost to the point where it's like, because I think there's plenty of stories that can be told with Mando and Grogu. I think their capacity is almost limitless, but Bad Batch did something that, some of the other shows haven't done, is just like end it. And for the fans of it, they felt satisfied and with a real like hunger for more. And I don't know if I felt that way with Mando, another 3-season Star Wars show. So that was just something I noticed between the two.
Because I feel like Mando kind of ended the same way, where it was like him and Grogu sitting on Navarro in their little house, like a happier ending. But yeah, I agree. I didn't feel the same way that I did with seeing Hunter and Omega in the epilogue.
Right.
No, absolutely, because too how the way how the Mandalorian ended, it was just kind of like an anticlimactic ending, and it's just kind of like we didn't feel as satisfied. It was just like, all right. And then they're like, all right, we're having a movie like in 2025 or 2026, and it's like, all right, you're kind of milking it a little. I mean, as excited as I am, but
I think it's great.
I, I mean, like, don't get me wrong. Of course, I'm going to still run to the theaters and see it because I'm just a loyal Star Wars fan. But I just don't want them to ruin what was something that was already special with Mandalorian. What made it unique and different was we didn't know too much about it, and I don't want the mystique of those characters to be tarnished. And whereas I feel like with Bad Batch, there was a mystique to them, but it was built up over time. And while we all knew this was the ending, we weren't like, oh, is it going to be a bad ending? Is it like we were kind of iffy with it? Like this, it was kind of, we were just open-minded, excited for more, and we were satisfied. And that's surprising to me that animation shows or the animated shows have done it a little bit better compared to the live action productions, which is shocking, really.
Yeah, I mean, when it's kind of crazy. So there's a stop motion YouTuber that I'm a massive fan of. His name's Leo Legendary. I don't know if y'all have ever seen any of his videos. Totally check him out. Like his stuff is insane. As an action figure enjoyer, it's just mwah. But his stuff, is mostly about what he likes, but whenever there's something kind of intriguing, he'll do a review on his Instagram or whatever. And he talked about how Lucasfilm Animation has really been what's been keeping Star Wars alive, like behind the scenes, because for like the normies, they watch Mando and, some of Boba or whatever. And, they like it because Grogu's there and Mando's there and it's fun shootouts. And, I'm there for that stuff as well. But, it's Bad Batch, it's Rebels, it's Clone Wars that is constantly being talked about amongst fans like us. And like it or not, like it's the stories with the most intriguing plot points that bring people back, and so it's the secret weapon for Lucasfilm right now. And I would say the same thing. I would group in Fallen Order and Survivor into those as well. If Star Wars gaming could get just a little bit better grip on what it's doing, I think it could easily fall into that secret weapon category as well. But
yeah, that's a whole nother roundtable within itself about the video.
Yeah. Oh boy,
we could derail on that one pretty heavily. But no,
yes,
I agree. I'm so torn with Bad Batch, and I know you guys you've heard my complaints and stuff like that with it. Because I really want to like it. I really like, I got the Hunter figure over here. When I saw that, I was kind of like Nick, like when they were first introduced, I was like, oh man, these guys are so freaking cool. They're like kind of, I grew up with Republic Commandos. Like that was my kind of Bad Batch growing up. And then we get like the Bad Batch, who are like even more badass than like Delta Squad and stuff like that, because they have all the enhancements. They have my favorite colors, red and black. I was like, oh man, like that's cool with skulls on the masks and all that, or helmets and all that stuff. And so I kind of it feels like I am being kind of torn a little bit, because like I definitely did enjoy season 3 way more than I enjoyed season 2. You guys know I was the hugest fan of Bad Batch season 2, but I will agree that like I think the animation is kind of like where it's at. We got Clone Wars, we got Rebels, we got Bad Batch, because the people who really love Bad
Star Wars
Batch,
Resistance.
No, we don't mention that one.
I like the art style of Resistance. I couldn't get
Wow.
into it, man. It wasn't my thing.
Horrible.
But it might be a hot take. I actually like Resistance's art style better than Rebels art style. That might be a hot take. I don't know.
Really?
Yeah, but
even with Rebels like being solely based on Ralph McQuarrie concept art, like that little bit doesn't like.
No. I just think that for me, there's some things that like as like a 3D artist myself, there's some things that are meant to stay in 2D, and there's some things that are meant to stay in 3D. And I really love Ralph McQuarrie's art style. I just didn't think it translated very well in the 3D kind of. And this is just my opinion, right? To each their own. But I just didn't. I didn't feel like it's not bad. It's just not my favorite out of all the animations. And plus too, with like how, especially with Tales of the Empire, seeing some of those Rebels characters and Clone Wars art styles like Rook and Thrawn, I was just like,
well, Rook looked insane when he first popped up. My friend and I were just like, "Oh my god, he does have a smooth face. He looks incredible."
he had like almost like warts and like blemishes and
like a facial hair and stuff. He looked so like grizzled. Oh, he looked so good.
And we talked about that in they keep redoing kind of Thrawn, but he looks more and more like the comic Thrawn. You know, he's got the freaking cheekbones that can cut diamonds, and like he just got his eyes and like it's super wild. So it's I don't really know where I was going with all this, but just I guess giving my thoughts on the seasons as a whole is like, I think overall, like Bad Batch was, I kind of feel like I'm in the same boat as everybody else, which I'm honestly surprised with you guys. I thought you guys held Bad Batch was up there a little bit more, like maybe even beating out like Rebels and stuff like that. But to hear a lot of you guys say that like Clone Wars, Rebels, Bad Batch, I was a little surprised on that front, but I'm kind of in the same boat. And I really thought that it started off really well. Like season 1 is, dude, like I think the only episode in season 1 that I was like, okay, was the one where they had to go underneath like Sid's like base. And even that one's not too bad, but I just felt like that one was the weakest one out of the whole season. But like, dude, seeing Camino being blown up at the end.
Oh, that was nuts.
Those like shots, like right before it gets blown up, where like everything's quiet and they have like just still like, dude, I felt like that scene lasted a lifetime. Like we grew up there. Like we watched the Clone Wars and like all the episodes on Camino. Like I felt like almost like my home was getting blown up, you know, or something like that, because we spent so much time there. And it's just, man, it's stuff like that I do hold, and that's why I still hold Bad Batch in, you know, higher regards too. It's just because you get that, or like when Tech like sacrificing himself to save the rest of the Bad Batch, like those moments. Like I'm not gonna say you don't get them in live action, because you definitely do. I just feel like for some reason they hit harder in animation, even like in Clone Wars season 7 with Ahsoka, or like in Tales, you know, with the Dooku arc and the Ahsoka arc of her, you know, training to block the blaster bolts. Like I really do feel like I'm in agreement with you guys that animation is just the future, man.
You know, the animated characters are leaps and bounds better than a lot of the live action ones too. I mean, like Ahsoka, I don't even know if that's even a fair comparison, because we spent, you know, 7 seasons with her in the Clone Wars movie, Tales of the Jedi, and now her own show. And so like there has just been so much time spent with Ahsoka. But even if you compare any member of the Bad Batch to, we'll just say Mando, like there is no comparison. Like they are just better characters through and through. And so I think that's why like it hits harder, because the writers are better. Like it's that simple. Like the people that write the animated Star Wars shows are better writers than the live action ones. And I like Johnny Favs. I think he does a good job, but like he's not as good as Jennifer Corbett or Brad Rao or Filoni when he has creative control. You know,
well, it's just like getting passed down. Like George taught Dave, and then Dave taught the other writers, and it's getting, you know, it's kind of like almost like the Jedi. It's like the lineage is getting kind of passed down. So we get that epicness, you know, and then the art style, and then the score too. Like the score, like Bad Batch's score is like super awesome. You know, I mean, all the scores are. Tales of the Jedi was awesome. Tales of the Empire was really good. You really feel, even Clone Wars, you know, you feel those. I believe it's all the same person. I'm not 100% on that.
Kevin Kiner.
Yeah, is it for
Kevin
all of them?
Kiner and his kids now, I think.
Okay.
I think his kids are also doing a lot of it.
Yeah, because like, dude, just
the same thing gets passed down. Still sounds just as good.
Yeah, I will say, the three main ingredients: writing, animation, and I think I'll say this about the writing because that's the only one that I'm a little iffy on. I think the episodes that are supposed to hit really hit with Bad Batch, and then some of the episodes that are more of like a transitional or like I guess you could call it filler or like a side quest and stuff like that. To me personally, fell flat. But I also have heard some of your guys' arguments where I'm like, well, I can see that. Like Wes, you made that video. Guys could go check that out if you haven't about people being silly about the Bad Batch and stuff like that.
Silly geese.
Yeah, silly time. But I did. While I don't necessarily agree with some of your takes, I do see that other side of it. And you even mentioned some stuff that I was like, you know what, I didn't see it from that perspective. So it's like it really is, I guess, a matter of perspective too. It's like what you see as filler and what you don't see as filler.
Okay, Max. So I guess what I want to know is.
Get down to the nitty gritty.
No. This is not an attack.
No, dude,
Max, let's get into it.
No,
I guess
let's do it.
I guess what I want to know is why you feel like you need to make a rebuttal to my video, and why like when the season ended and Nick hadn't seen it yet, and you were like, okay, one word to describe it, no spoilers. Your word was frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I just want to know like why you feel that way.
That's a good question.
Well, here, I'll answer the first one. The first one that you answered is because it's fun. Just because,
absolutely, absolutely. But you have to have ammo, and so I'm wondering what it is you're going to
shoot. I've been doing my convention prep, so I haven't had time to like really sit. I want to make sure that video is good as well as funny, because yours was kind of lighthearted and upbeat. I got a convention this week, so I haven't had time, but it will be coming. It will be coming out.
I'm looking forward to it.
But the reason why I said frustrating is because what we were saying earlier, we held Clone Wars, Rebels, and this is why I'm saying Clone Wars, Rebels, and Bad Batch. I honestly, while I did think Bad Batch was good, I think it could have been up there with the heavy hitters. My Bad Batch is a little lower than your guy. Like you said, Rebels and like Bad Batch. Like my Bad Batch is more so like down like here. Like it's not. And I think it's just because for me personally, they didn't focus on stuff that I was necessarily interested in. I think they could have done the side quests like very differently. You're going to have, especially with 16 episode seasons, you're going to have side quests. Like I know people don't like filler and don't like random adventures and stuff like that. Dude, the Clone Wars and Rebels both have a crap ton of those that are awesome. Like there's so many side adventures that don't really pertain to like the main storyline that are freaking epic. I can't name any off the top of my head right now, but I think they missed the mark on the Clone Wars. The Bad Batch is a spinoff of the Clone Wars, and I feel like the one thing that they didn't focus on nearly enough is the clones themselves. What I would have found way more interesting, and I'll go into like I'm kind of going to give fluffy answers right now, and I'll go into depth more in the video that I'm making. But like, I was way more interested, and we didn't get to unfortunately see any of it really. What Rex and Echo were doing, and I think personally that's the route that they should have taken with season 2. I also think that like midway through season 2, Omega should have been taken by the Empire, not at the end, because I think the first half you could have had her really build with the Bad Batch and maybe even some of the other clone brethren that she had, like they're rescuing and saving from the Empire. She could really build up, and each episode that I would have been a little bit more okay with it being a side quest is like maybe one episode she she builds a relationship with Tech. One episode she builds a relationship with Hunter, Wrecker, and stuff like that. And they kind of do that. They kind of do that with like the one where they're going to the what is it, refinery, and she has that like kind of like that moment with Tech. Was that what it was? I can't remember in season 2.
I think so. Yeah, they were drilling for something.
where she kind of was like, hey man, you have to kind of not, everything's not just about logic and facts, and you got to have like emotion, and like we're a family and stuff like that. Like that stuff is good. I just, that 2 seconds that we got of that, like the whole rest of the episode was like really silly, and I just didn't, the missions that they would like, this is supposed to be, and I'm kind of bouncing all over the place now, but this group, even though that they lost Crosshair at the beginning, is supposed to be the best of the best that the Republic has to offer. Like there is minus like Jedi, like there is no better unit than them because of their enhancement. And I feel like a lot of those side quests, they don't complete or they fail. And I'm just like, dude, these are like literally the best the Republic has to offer. And I get they're scrambling. There's the Empire. But I just think that they could have chosen better paths with a lot of the stuff that goes on within these episodes. There's a lot of stuff that happens between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. Like the Empire, like basically like overnight, like the Republic turns into the Empire. There's a crap ton of stuff that happens across the galaxy. And I feel like we didn't really get that. We kind of got some kind of more sillier side quests. And that's why I said it was frustrating, because I actually really liked season 3. Season 3, in my opinion, is right up there with, it goes season 1, season 3, season 2 for me, because I felt like season 2 was just a little rushed. Like maybe they had to scramble a little bit. I don't really know what was going on, because like that was the same time that like Boba Fett was coming out, and I felt Boba Fett was a little rushed and stuff like that. Like I just felt like they were trying to get stuff out to keep people subscribed with Disney Plus, and I felt like some of it lacked in those regards. And like, and I'm gonna also say this to like the viewers and stuff like that. I am by no means trying to take away, if you guys love season 2 and love just the Bad Batch from start to finish, I'm not trying to take away you guys' opinions on that. That's awesome. I wish I wish I was on that parade with you guys. I just felt like they kind of took it in a route that I didn't, and they came back, but they kind of took it in a direction that I was just like, it wasn't necessarily for me. And that's why I say it's frustrating, because I thought season 3 was really good, but by the time the finale happened, I watched the episode and I was just like, okay, like it was good, but like, okay, like they're chilling on Pabu, great. And I just, that's kind of how I felt. I didn't feel that same connection as like the end of Rebels, or like the end of Clone Wars, or Tales of the Jedi, or heck, even Bad Batch season 1, I would say, or 2, because the end of 2 was really good too. And I just didn't have that same emotional connection for some reason. And I think that was because I was just kind of turned off by the direction that they went. So maybe that was, I tried to make it kind of light and fluffy. Maybe that was a long-winded answer, but that's why I was kind of frustrated with it, is because I don't want to dislike Star Wars. I want to love Star Wars. This is my, like you can see behind me, I got days I'm wearing a Boba Fett t-shirt. I got stuff over there, half the merch on my shop is Star Wars. Like I don't want to dislike Star Wars. And I feel like the very few times on my channel you hear me talk negative about it, because I just try to focus on the stuff that I like. But I guess that's kind of my answer to the question.
Yeah, I can see a lot of your points there. I can see where you're coming from. My main thing was, now that the show has wrapped up, I've seen some people say that they were trying to figure out what the theme of the show is, and the one that I think makes the most sense, the one that I think the writers were really trying to go for, and I think can apply to literally every episode of the show, is individuality and conformity, and what that looks like, and how that changes a person. And I think that at a core is what the Bad Batch is about. There are no clones that we have spent more time with at this point. I would, maybe Rex, but maybe not. Like Rex is not in every episode of the Clone Wars, but we get, what is it? Quick math. Close to 50 episodes with each member of the Bad Batch.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if Rex can compare to that, honestly. And so that's where I really feel like Bad Batch shined for me, was, you know, telling the story of the clones after the Clone Wars through 5-6 people, including Omega. And I just, in my opinion, like, it really succeeded in that, because it made me care about the Bad Batch, and in doing so, it made me care about the future of the clones even more than I already did after the end of the Clone Wars. Because when Jesse, you know, in Order 66 is
R.I.P.
Rex is trying to get through to him and he just can't, and it's like talking to a brick wall, you know, you felt that, and it's like, dang, man, what happened to these guys afterwards? And while I do think it would have been really cool to see what Rex and Echo were doing, it would have been what we did see with Rex, and it would have been more stuff with Chuchi in the Senate chamber, which I thought was fantastic. It would have been stuff with one thing I do wish they gave a little bit of insight on was what happened to Cody.
Yeah.
But because the show was so absent in that side of it, and you know, none of those familiar clones were in the finale, like, that really leads me to believe that their story will be carried on in something else. And I'm glad they did it that way, because if Rex and Cody and Gregor and Wolf and they all show up in the finale, that's where our attention goes. It's not focused on the family that is the Bad Batch anymore. It's not focused on rescuing Omega and, you know, this amazing tie-in with the Zillo Beast being the thing to kind of like free the clones, you know. So like, I feel like they would have served as more of a distraction. It's kind of like when, you know, what was I gonna say? Frick, I totally lost my train of thought. It's kind of like when Vader shows up. You know, when Vader shows up in Rogue One, like, you no longer care nearly as much about Jyn and Cassie and all those characters. You're like, oh my gosh, give me more Vader. And we're all like that because Vader is amazing, and he is without a doubt the greatest character in cinematic history. And so when you take that down on a smaller scale, Rex and Wolf and Gregor and all these clones that we love being the greatest characters in Lucasfilm animation, like, their presence will totally take you out of the Bad Batch's story and what it is for them. And so that's probably why they didn't spend as much time with Rex and Echo. And I also think we'll get a follow-up to that in something else where they can divert time and attention to those specific characters and something else, and it'll be even better.
Yeah. Well, let me kind of backtrack on that, because I think maybe I didn't. I just meant like them doing stuff like Rex and Echo, not them necessarily. Because I agree with you. Like, Rex and Echo are like that's like they're the clones.
Yeah,
man,
they're the boys.
So I totally agree with you on that. It's like you kind of have to like play a balance, because some characters will steal the show if you're not careful. But I still think they could have done, like, what I really liked about season 2 is when they started it off, right, they're going to Dooku's like abode or like mansion or whatever, and they're like, oh, that's separatist territory, and that's this, and that, you know. And I really loved that dynamic of the Bad Batch kind of having still that, like, that separation of like them being in the war and like not really realizing that the war's over and there's not really separatists anymore, you know, like, because like that old dude kind of talks to them about it. It's like, yo, like, we're like, you don't see the orbital bombardment outside. There's no separatists anymore. Like, we're just as screwed as you guys. And I really think they could have played on that dynamic. And I really think, you know, to your point with like the individuality and like really choosing like what you want to be, you know, I do agree. Like, that is kind of the theme of like along with family that's always an underlying theme with Star Wars, family. But and I think they could have like really done that, like, identity and choosing that path. Because like while I don't necessarily agree with them like not wanting to fight anymore, I do get it. Like, you know, having a kid like changes your perspective and all that stuff. But I think it would have been cool to like really play on that dynamic of like teaching Omega how to be a part of the squad, dealing with like the separatists turning into like the Empire, the separatists in the Republic turning into the Empire. And then also one thing that they played a lot on in season 1 was like they weren't liked by the clones. Like they were given that nickname, the Bad Batch. They were probably picked on just as much, I would say, as like 99 or something like that. Really treated with like, I guess that's why they were, Clone Force 99, in homage. But like, I felt like they really could have played on that dynamic and like really grown to be like, even though they didn't accept us, like they need our help more than ever, and like who's going to save them if we're not going to save them, sort of thing. And you don't have to make that like the main focus of the show. I just would have liked a little bit more of that in the show. And not to mention, I think the missed opportunity, I've said this once or twice, most people who don't play Republic Commandos don't care, but like it would have been so cool if in the background, like the Delta Squad, like they actually brought in Delta Squad and had one badass squad hunting down another badass squad, because you kind of get that with Crosshair and like his like, but they're just kind of like regs, or not even regs, they're like enlistees, because that's what ran
stormtroopers.
Yes, and I think it could have been cool with Delta Squad coming in, because you could have made Crosshair a part of that Delta Squad, and that could have been a driving force to realize that like Crosshair kind of realizing that like, oh, I'm expendable, like, because you could really see like Delta Squad being like super brainwashed, and it would juxtapose to the Bad Batch being like, hey, we never follow orders, we kind of do what we want to. And I think you could kind of have really fun dynamics with that. And I think people would have, because that's still technically filler, that's not really pertaining to the main story, but I think you could have had that, which would have made for a more interesting dynamic than maybe some of the adventure ones. Like, I didn't really mind the treasure hunting one, but I felt like there could have been a more interesting story instead of the treasure hunting one. The one where they go to Kashyk's okay. The riot racing one was also, I know a lot of people had a problem with the riot racing one, but it was cool to see something other than pod racing, or kind of like a pseudo version of it. But I don't know. Like I said, it's really hard for me to like really decipher all my thoughts, because I do really like Bad Batch. I really like it at school. I mean, crap. If I didn't like it, I wouldn't be cosplaying it. I wouldn't have a Hunter Hawk. Have the group with you guys where we nerd out about it all day long. And it's just I have these like weird frictions kind of with it. So it's like that's why it's frustrating. Is because I don't want the friction. I just want to love it, and that's why I said frustrating at the end of the thing. So
I'm gonna encourage you strongly to rewatch.
I'm definitely going to. Yeah.
Just because like when you rewatch a show that's come out, like for me, it drastically changes my opinion on it sometimes. Because you get to see it in its entirety, and there are things that you pick up on earlier episodes that tie into future episodes that you just don't remember because it was 5 weeks ago or whatever.
Right.
So, because some of the stuff that you listed there, it is in the show, like the separatist stuff. I just finished rewatching season 1, and there's an episode where they go to a separatist planet, and Echo is the one that has the PTSD because he was captured by separatists and used as a computer for them. And he doesn't want to do the mission, and he treats the senator or the governor poorly or whatever. And Tech is the one. And I also think that like each season probably has its own individual theme. If the first one is survival, the second one is adaptation, the third one is decisions. Survival, coming off the back of Order 66, you're hunted by Crosshair. And it's about them trying to just make their way and kind of regain their footing. The second season is about them becoming mercenaries and kind of learning how to work the galaxy without something to fall back on. And the third season is about deciding to join the fight and do more. And I don't know, like the Delta Squad thing would have been really cool, but it would make Crosshair's arc make zero sense, because his arc only works in his solitude, in his loneliness. And for him to be without his brothers, without the Republic, without any of his friends, any clones, anyone to relate to, he's completely alone. And that's what pushes him back to being with his brothers. If he had a dark Bad Batch in the Delta Squad, I don't think he would feel that way. And I don't think he would feel a need to come back to the Bad Batch, family or not.
Well, I think I think there's ways to definitely do that because like maybe he at first it does seem kind of like he does have a new Bad Batch, right? Um, but they operate in a completely different way. And I think it would push him more to the solid because I still think that that episode with man, I'm so bad with the name of that clone. Is it Mayday or Mayhem?
Mayday.
Mayday.
Yeah, like that episode, you can still have that. Like maybe they're hunting it or hunting the Bad Batch, and like Crosshair has a shot. Delta Squad tells him to take it or whatever, and he just, for some reason, can't pull the trigger or something like that, alienating him further from the Delta Squad. And like this is just off the top of my head. I'm sure there's way more ways you could elaborate on this. Alienating him from that squad, maybe he gets reassigned, stuff like that. So he still has that solitude arc where it's pushing him further and further away. He's like, oh man, I'm not a part of the Bad Batch. I'm not a part of the Delta Squad. I'm what is going on? I'm just like I thought I was going to be this elite soldier, like cream of the crop of the Empire, and it's just like, dude, there's no margin for error, and if you do, you're discarded. And I still think there could have been something like that in there with.
I mean, I just think at that point you just really want to see the Delta Squad. And
100%, 100%. I'm not even denying that.
I'm right there with you, but I don't want it in Bad Batch where they can just be villains and then get like killed off with Scorch, like as Scorch. I'd rather just them do a different game.
True.
Like I don't. If they brought back the Delta Squad to be killed by the Bad Batch, and they tried to do this character thing with them with Crosshair and stuff like that, like that's not what the Delta Squad is capable of in terms of their story potential. And then I think this would be a conversation about how they sold the Delta Squad short. And I don't know. I mean, I don't have an issue with how Scorch died. I know a lot of people were like, oh my gosh, this show sucks or whatever. But like, I don't freaking care. I mean, the other three are still out there. And I don't know. I would much prefer to see something else with them than to just be faceless antagonists in the Bad Batch.
Well, I also don't think you have to kill them. Like they did the ending of Bad Batch where I thought like a good chunk of the Bad Batch was going to die and they all survived. I still think there's like, I don't know, maybe Rex saves them. Maybe the Bad Batch captures them because the Bad Batch is objectively better than Delta Squad because of their enhancements. Like I love Delta Squad and Delta Squad was like my first like Bad Batch, but like technically Bad Batch is better.
Bad Batch was taking out commandos like every episode.
Yeah, exactly. I do feel
and so that kind of like goes into my point a little bit more. How is that a formidable opponent for the Bad Batch?
Well, because I still think they could go toe to toe with them. I just don't think. I still think
Could
they're
they?
better though. I think they could. I think it's like I would say it's like kind of like a Rocky versus like Drago sort of thing. Like both are really freaking good. It's just one's like Drago's on drugs and is enhanced. Deep cut if you haven't seen Rocky 4, but but Rocky comes in and freaking takes him out. It's like, and like I said, I don't think they do.
Yeah, but Rocky's the good guy.
Yeah, I know. I'm just using that as like as an example where it's like two super elite, warriors going toe to toe. I still feel like I kind of feel like Bad Batch is here and like Delta Squad's here. The only thing that really separates them is their, I would say, is their abilities, and the abilities are what give the Bad Batch a step up because they're enhanced. They're kind of like mutants almost.
I don't know. I think Scorch. I mean, Scorch, even on his own, but with other commandos, like in the earlier episodes, when they go into the other bases, Scorch gets stunned. I mean, and in this final episode, he gets blasted. Yeah. I mean, he just stood there.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, I guess you can kind of blame that on the writing or whatever, but I don't think there's a comparison between Delta Squad and Bad Batch. I think Bad Batch walks all over him, and
I think it's also how you write it too, because like Scorch was like, in my opinion, Scorch was written poorly. Like he could have at least like I don't know, like hit Hunter once. Like Hunter doesn't have to die, but he could have like shot Hunter or something.
But Scorch was added to the Bad Batch for fan service.
Yeah, I didn't like it because they didn't do anything with it.
He's a recolored commando. There's nothing about him that's different than the other commandos we see in this show. And so to me, it's like, what's the point of even creating a separation there and doing Bad Batch versus Delta Squad when we see Bad Batch fight other commandos. Like I don't know. I don't like it.
Well, I do think that Delta Squad, now this isn't confirmed, but I do think they're higher up than just like the generic, because I want to say it was like Delta Squad was supposed to be like the best of the commandos, at least to like the knowledge that we have. I could be wrong. Maybe there's something in the EU that says differently. But my understanding of it was like the Delta Squad was the Bad Batch before the Bad Batch was created.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I still think that you could write it in a way to where they go toe to toe with it. But the Bad Batch being better would be the reason why they can escape too and move on to like the next episode, and why it kind of gives this like Predator kind of like mentality and stuff like that. I don't know. I think it could have been. I think it would have been more, to me, it would have been more interesting than the clone assassins that did nothing and we got nothing from them. I think
I don't know. I disagree with that as well, because the clone assassins, I would so much rather get something new than something reused like Delta Squad for fan service. And I thought the clone shadows were a much more interesting concept, because you get their helmets knocked off and you see they are like literally just clones that get their brains wiped. Yeah. And like, honestly, I guess if I had a critique with the finale is I wish we saw more of those other like dark Bad Batch.
I agree.
That Hemlock had locked away, because I mean, you know, if we're going to do Elite Squad versus Elite Squad, I would much rather see those guys versus the Bad Batch than Delta Squad. Like, without a doubt. I mean, they are unique. They're new. They got all these crazy weapons. Yeah. I don't know.
I think we're just going to have to agree to disagree on that one.
I'm not saying that I don't want to see Delta Squad and that you're wrong. I'm just saying
a hater.
I think the show did more interesting things than that. That's all I'm saying.
No, I think with the shadow clones, or whatever we're calling them, I think they serve the Bad Batch story as a whole better too, because it leans into the whole cloning thing and augmentations that Hemlock was performing on Tantus. And I think seeing them go up against the Bad Batch fits the story better rather than Delta, just because we don't know a whole lot about them, so we don't care so much if one or two dies. As with Delta Squad, we would probably be more likely to be just like, oh, why did Wrecker just shoot Scorch's head off? That was kind of stupid. So I feel like there's less likely for like nitpicks and stuff doing it this way, whereas having just both teams go up against each other, Delta and Bad Batch, I mean, having them both go up against each other and either one just obliterating the other, or them just kind of calling it a draw and heading their separate ways. I just feel like doing it this way and how they did it just served the story better.
Absolutely. Sorry.
Just really, really quick. You would also create a civil war in the fans. Like,
that's always a thing.
Do you remember when Captain America Civil War was coming out and everyone was talking about, I'm Team Iron Man, I'm Team Iron Man, I'm Team Cap, I'm Team Cap? You'd get the same thing with Bad Batch, except It is fun. It is fun. But Civil War is a very different story than Bad Batch, and Bad Batch would be about the Bad Batch winning the day. And whereas Civil War is about a political thing with Civil War is by far the best MCU movie. Come at me. But you would have people, I'm not saying, but like maybe like yourself, I know Strike, based off what he put on his story, would definitely be like, Delta Squad needs to beat Bad Batch, blah, 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 like go Team Delta. And like, while that would be fun, there would be people that would hate the show because their team didn't win.
Yeah.
And Civil War, no sides win.
Though. You can't win though, because there's people who hate the show because they feel like it was filler, and there's a lot of filler, and like it just didn't lead anywhere. And they by season 3, even though season 3 was better, they weren't interested anymore. And there's a lot of people, I would argue, I would say there's more people less interested in the Bad Batch than interested in it. I'm not one of those. Like I said, I like the Bad Batch, but there's a lot of people who don't give, like, they're not even watching the show because they don't care.
then I would like genuinely like this is how I feel. Those people are wrong.
Yeah. I mean, and that's fair.
it's-
I'm just saying that there's always 2 points to be made, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, but from what I hear in that side of the story, I hear people who one are on their phone while watching or don't care enough to move on to the next season.
Yeah.
And that to me is not a valid opinion in anything, much less Star Wars. So you got to pay attention in Star Wars.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And when it comes to storytelling, it's a really tricky thing. Just kind of hearing all of you saying like the Delta Squad versus the Bad Batch. It's kind of the same thing with the arguments with the Jedi, like how people say like, oh, the Old Republic was better. No, the High Republic's better. And it's like, no, like kind of those same arguments. And coming from someone who really pays attention and is, I'm not a professional writer, but I pay attention to those details when I write stories. And it's hard to mix different characters, different genres, and trying to have characters like the Delta Squad and the Bad Batch kind of like one for cameo, for kind of like fan service almost, doesn't always work well. The only time Vader worked well was obviously Rogue One. And although we did, at that point, Jyn and Cassian were dead. So it didn't matter if like, you know, that like, oh, they're still back. Like they were gone. So of course we're like, oh, shoot, Vader. And it connected to the OG prequel or films, the sequels, whatever. The thing when it comes to Star Wars for me is these stories have to make me feel something from these characters. I have to have some kind of connection where it tells a human story. Because if you're just going to have a story where a character is just like super OP and they're just perfect and amazing at everything and they don't have any failures or they don't ever overcome anything, then yeah, that to me is boring. Because that's why I'm so passionate with stories like the Clone Wars and the Jedi and the Cal Kestis series, because they all went through something where they felt like failure was the end all the odds were pinned against them. Same thing with the Bad Batch. They're essentially being hunted by the Empire because they're a potential threat to take down their plans for the clones and other things that they're taking over and control of the galaxy. And they don't want any type of spark of hope to be given to anyone in the galaxy. They just want to drive fear because fear is strong, but hope is stronger. And you know, having cameos can do something justice if it's done right. Like in the beginning of season 1 of the Bad Batch, we got a little cameo from, oh my gosh, the Jedi Master from Rebels. What's his name? Is it Kanan?
Kanan.
Yeah, Kanan.
We see him as a young Padawan going through Order 66, which I was shocked because he always talks about it in Rebels, but we don't actually see that perspective. And in Bad Batch, we see it. You know, we don't see everything because we know what happens to him going on later on in Rebels, but that was done perfectly. It left me like, okay, we just filled in that little gap. But if you're constantly bringing other characters from other stories, video games, comics, whatever, I feel like it's too much. And like Wes said, it takes away from our focus of the characters that the producers and writers are trying to build up here. Because then, they kind of did it in Mando too, or Boba Fett, my correction, where we were focused on Boba Fett and then we had 2 episodes of Mando, and everyone, and even my family included, we all agreed that like that should not have happened. Mando should not have been there. If they were going to add those 2 episodes with Luke and Mando, it should have been in season 3 of The Mandalorian, not in Boba Fett, because now our focus is off Boba Fett. Which sucks because Boba Fett is the most amazing bounty hunter out there. And now it just got derailed because of Mando and Grogu, because they're like, oh, well, just in case their attention's off, let's throw them in there. So when you look at it from those perspectives, you kind of have to take a step back and really see what characters can drive this story, even if it is a cameo. How it's done correctly really makes a difference in an animated show, in a video game, in a live action show. And I really pay attention to those details. I always look, what's the theme? What is their motive? What are the villains' motives? Because I want to feel something from these characters that make me root for the heroes, but also maybe have some sympathy for the villains if they went through stuff to drive them to that point. Or I just hate them because they're jerks and they're just power hungry and want to terminate everyone that gets in the way of them. That's how you know a story is doing the characters justice and the storytelling correctly. Because there's nothing worse than reading a story, playing through a story, or watching a story that's just constantly hand-holding you the entire ride. Like, I love shows that, or anything that just make me think, have my own theories, what's going to guess that could happen next, or just totally throws you off with a plot twist, like with Jedi Survivor and Boda Kuna. Like, we thought, oh, it was Dagon Gera the entire time who was the main antagonist, and it's like, nope, plot twist, it's Bode. And that just shows how good storytelling can be when the writers do it correctly and when they hire the right people. That is one thing I will say that Disney has one little flaw with them when it comes to who they're hiring for these stories and shows and everything. And I feel like growing up as a kid, I have such high standards now as an adult when I go into these shows and films, because we were spoiled as kids. Let's be honest. We had Star Wars, the prequels, we had Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, like all of these amazing stories, all these amazing worlds. And to kind of see it, not saying Star Wars is horrible now, but we have a certain expectation going into these stories. Some can hit it right off the bat, and some are kind of a miss. And, you know, it's okay. You're either going to like it or you're not going to like it. You know, if you're just going to be a jerk about it, then like, all right, you need to chill and like go take a walk or something. Yeah, sorry, just totally going on a tangent now, but
no, I mean, this is what it's here for, man. Well, and this is the thing is like, I feel like we all kind of have like what we would do differently, or what was done perfectly and stuff like that. But we can all sit down and still have this conversation. And at the end of the day, you know, go play Helldivers at the end of the day, or, you know, go, there's like, I think it was Sarah saying like, or it was either Sarah and Nick being like, we literally use the Sad Batch group chat like every day. Like, I don't think there's been a day where we haven't like talked to each other, you know, and stuff like that. And that's like, that is the main point. You know, we might have disagreements and stuff like that, but I think that there is, you know, I think there's, I like this is what I'm saying. If you were saying, sorry about the tangent, I like that we're all, you know, we're all kind of going on our own tangents about, you know, Bad Batch and storytelling and what works and what doesn't work. And I really like that, you know, that aspect of our group and the PMP's Den group as a whole. Like even the people who aren't on here, who've been on here before, I think we all kind of have that similar vibe, which is cool.
And I will say the one thing that came out of the show, I never, like when I first started watching the show, for democracy. Yes, Sam, he knows. If there's one thing that I'm very happy with that came out of this show is the Sad Batch. It was essentially
for sure
because of it. And that's just more that I could ever ask for, whether you like the show or not. I'm just so happy that Star Wars for the last few years has just connected me with so many people that I never thought in my wildest dreams I would, like, I'd be talking on a podcast, doing my own little YouTube channel, like just talking about something that I'm so passionate and love this franchise, and connecting with other fans who love it just as much. So just gaining a friendship out of this is more than enough. Like, if that's just what Star Wars is going to do for me, I'm here for it. Like, obviously I'm just going to enjoy the stories as they come, whether I like it or not, but I'm just happy to have friends to talk about it with. And that's just all I need.
Hell yeah, man. I was trying to listen to you guys talk, and I was trying not to laugh in the background.
Oh my god, that trailer came out of left field, and I'm so happy about it. I'm so glad we're getting like a Star Wars What If.
It looks a lot of fun. Like, I sat down and watched the holiday special Lego one, and a couple years ago when that came out, and I like, it's not as good as the regular holiday special, but like it still has like some fun elements to it. And this one like was probably the last one since that I'm like, I will definitely be sitting down and watching this Lego Star Wars
100%.
cartoon.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
It looks like it's gonna be a banger. Like they were like talking about like X-wing TIE fighters and stuff like that. I was like, dude, I'm in.
Yeah.
Dark
And
Jar
then
Jar. I'm
Mark
in.
Hamill's reprising his role as Luke, and then Ahmed Best
Epic.
is Jar Jar again. I mean,
Heck yeah.
Dang, I didn't know that.
yeah,
But
yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
knew Ahmed Best, but I didn't know about Mark Hamill. That's pretty
Mhm.
cool. I do want to talk a little because we kind of got, you know, I love that with these talks that we've had over like the past hour. I do want to talk about like season 3 and like that final episode a little bit more. We were kind of talking more broader strokes of Bad Batch as like a whole. And I do have a couple more questions for you guys. And then we can go on skedaddle because we're already at like an hour and 10 minutes. We've been real going with this. But how do you guys feel about the Zillo Beast? Because that was something for like the longest time. We got it in Clone Wars, and then like freaking how I don't even know what season the Zillo Beast is. I can't remember off the top of my head, but it's been like 4 or 5 years, and then we got like the little snippet in Bad Batch, and then we got, you know, kind of like almost like a Jurassic Park moment where like the creatures just run free on the island, you know, with you see kind of the Zillo Beast going underneath the trees and stuff like that. How'd you guys feel about kind of coming to a close with that? I would say with that arc, because the Zillo Beast, if you're an animation fan, has been a question that's been widely searched for a while.
I thought we were going to see more of it, and not just like have. But I guess it makes a lot more sense where he would just try to get the hell away from there as fast as possible. But I was thinking it would be funny if like, and I was kind of expecting it, but like I said again, it makes more sense that it didn't happen. Like when they were all on the walkway and stuff at the end, and it's like all rainy and stuff. I thought it was gonna like slowly emerge and like eat Hemlock or something. I don't know. Yeah, like very like the beginning of what Jurassic World was that? Was it Fallen Kingdom was the second one?
I think so, yeah.
That's like my favorite opening to any Jurassic movie where it's like the T-Rex coming after the chopper in the rain. But anyway,
Yeah.
That's basically what I thought was going to happen. And like I said, it makes more sense that he kind of just booked it and got the hell away from a place where he was being tortured. It makes much more sense.
Yeah, I'm glad that we didn't dwell on it too long. Personally, I think it's pretty awesome that the Zillo Beast is the catalyst for all of the clones escaping the prison.
Yeah.
And I love that Omega, like Star Wars Animation's newest inclusion, is the reason that one of its oldest inclusions is now like back in the limelight. So I thought that was really cool. And yeah, I mean, obviously we know Palpatine doesn't really go anywhere with it because there was never any lightsaber proof or blaster proof Star Destroyers or Stormtroopers. So like, I don't think I really needed like closure on that front, but I think I definitely wanted to know what Palpatine did with it and like what happened. And I think Bad Batch delivered.
All right, Sarah, you can go, and then I'll talk about something else about this.
No, I literally was. You took my point where I was like, it literally felt like a Jurassic Park sequence. Like, what scene came to my mind was the very original, the very first one where they're all trying to escape, and then finally they're. Then the and I'm like, oh, okay. I'm like, we're just having a whole Jurassic Park sequence right here. Like, I kid you not, the music must have been playing in my head as I was watching that whole sequence. But I mean, there wasn't really much. It's like, yeah, I just kind of wanted to see what Palpatine did with it. And I feel like Bad Batch was just like, all right, here you go. And yeah, he escapes and got out of there. So there you go. And I'm like, all right, cool. Let's focus on the Bad Batch and see if they survive now.
Yeah, Palpatine took a lot of L's with Tantus.
Yeah, he really did. That's a money
pit.
pit right there.
Go ahead, Nick. Did you say you had something?
I was just gonna say, can we talk about that cut in that episode where like the Zillo Beast is screaming, and then it cuts right to Emery and Echo going into the vault? I love that so much.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, I like it. Like you feel the magnitude of like the Zillo Beast too. It's like shaking the whole freaking mountain, which is like really cool.
Yeah, that cut kind of caught me off guard for a second because like the filmmaking rule is if you notice the editing while you're watching, it's not good editing. But in this case, it felt intentional. And but like a prime example is the editing in the Boba Fett finale. Like when Boba goes against Cad Bane, it's horrendous. You go back and watch that scene. Like there are a million different cuts in 30 seconds. It's wild. But the I actually really enjoyed that cut as well, because it's just like the two polar opposites of what's happening in the same location.
And the reason why I like it so much too is it makes the base feel bigger, but it also it's like the Empire doesn't know, but they don't care what anyone else is doing. They just care about themselves, trying to like get their ranks up the highest. So it's cool, like how like you don't really hear something else going on from like it could be next door from you, but you're just so focused on your project and what you're doing to please someone higher up than you to try to get higher up yourself. So I think I like that until it started shaking the entire base. But
I think it's cool that like Tarkin obviously has like spies on Tantus, because how does he know that the Zilla Beast got out and like all this stuff's happening?
Cool. I like that.
It's kind of cool that like in the even on like the tops, because like Tantus is like at least in the EU, it was like the most secretive thing like the Empire had. Like there was nothing more I guess coveted than Tantus, you know. But how did you guys skip into going back to, or I guess skip into Hemlock? How did you feel about his death? Because I was kind of like, I'm kind of conflicted on it. I felt like it was almost like rushed in a way, like he just gets shot off the thing. Like I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it, but I'm curious to see how you guys thought. Like
I feel like it made sense because we finally got like the conclusion of Crosshair kind of chilling out and actually hitting his marks, but
losing his hand too.
Yeah, he was shooting with his left hand instead of his right, or was he a lefty? I don't remember. But I also liked it because that whole scene, he's throughout the whole show. I mean, he was very cool, calm, collected. He was always like on top of it, even if something was going wrong. He just shook his hand a little bit, and then he just kind of knew exactly what to do. But at that point, he was like really stressing out. You could see it in his and hear it in his voice too. So I feel like he was just not on top of it at that point. And then once they gunned Scorch down, he was like, "Oh shit, what's gonna happen now?" So I feel like it just made sense that he was unaware, and his guard wasn't up like it usually is. So it made him vulnerable to just getting stabbed in the leg.
Anybody else?
I agree.
Yes.
We're just like, we'll just give it to Nick. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, it was pretty satisfying. I mean, I was like, if this guy doesn't die, then this show is dead to me. No, I'm just kidding.
No, he needed to die for sure.
I'm like, he needed to die because I hated him from the get-go. I was just like, I just want to punch this man.
Yeah, like wasn't the first time we saw him, he just was like straight up walking through like gas and just like breathing it in normal.
Yeah.
Like that was crazy the first time I saw that.
Yeah, I was like, dang, like this
guy's scary.
Well, I think that's why he was always holding his hand. I think the gas like fucked him up.
Yeah, it definitely seems like he's the type to like run experiments on himself.
Yeah,
for sure.
He's the Kylo 2.0, just punching himself. Nah, I mean, his death was satisfying. I mean, I don't really know what more they could possibly do with it. I mean, I pretty much expected it. Like, they were already on the bridge, on the cliff, and he's like, oh, well, if I go, she goes. And it's like, all right, Crosshair, this is do or die. It's your moment. And I noticed the switch up, too, with his left hand instead of his right. So I was like, oh, he's switching it up, and he's more calm and collected now, which in those situations, you just kind of have to be. And it was just fine. It was like a sense of relief, like finally, like he's gone. Like they don't have to worry anymore because he was just willing to do anything to get those experiments done and even just risk killing Omega, that's just how nuts he was. I was like, dang, someone just knocked this guy out now. So yeah, I mean,
the rain was cool, I will say. Like them doing all that, like in the rain, like that definitely gave it an extra little,
edge.
to it. So
yeah, I mean, to kind of add to the Hemlock thing a little bit more. My favorite part about that entire sequence is one, you really see how efficient the Bad Batch has gotten in like working together as a family.
Mhm.
And then on top of that, I really, really, really loved how they shot Scorch and Hemlock like 6 times each, because
I shot
there was
times.
there was no like quick shot, boom, he's dead, because then it's like the whole thing of like, oh my gosh, they're still alive. Like, no, they are an elite killing squad. They had their opening, they unload, they move to the next target. To me, like, I just thought that was so clean, so crisp. And yeah, Hemlock is not coming back. So.
I don't know, man. Like Mike was saying, man, maybe the spider legs.
No, please, no.
He's gonna have some Zillow Beast legs or something like that.
That's funny.
One thing I'm curious about what you guys think is Tarkin. So like after everything's all like said and done, which was cool. I like how they like went into hyperspace and then the Star Destroyers came in.
Oh
like,
yeah.
Oh, that was such a great shot.
This is definitely before Rogue One, right? Like
Yeah.
Because Rogue One kind of butts up to
A New Hope. Yeah.
A New Hope. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
He wants Tantus, like I think he said, like slagged and basically all the funds diverted to Project Stardust. But I'm kind of confused because in Rogue One, what doesn't line up with me is he doesn't seem like he's interested in the project at all.
See, I think he was from the beginning.
Yeah, I think
he was just playing it cool. He was just being like, whatever.
That's what I always kind of felt it as.
That's what Tarkin does.
Yeah.
He always just like, because I think the whole thing was in case it did fail, he didn't want his name on it until it did work. So that whole time he was feeding Krennic money for it because he probably thought it was very promising, but he didn't want to slap his name on it until he knew it worked.
Yeah, because as soon as they blow up Jeddah City, it's like, this is mine now.
Yep.
And Koenig's like, we stand here amidst my achievement.
What is who is that character? I'm blanking on Ozil. Is that how you say it? Ozil?
Ozil.
Oh God, why does that name sound so familiar?
He's the guy that Vader chokes out in the beginning of Empire Strikes Back.
Oh
yeah.
Mustache.
Okay. Well, I mean, if he was in charge, I don't know what would be. I mean, would it change anything? I don't know.
Okay, Sam mails into my podcast. He has an obsession with Admiral Ozil. He has a headcanon theory that Ozil is a rebel spy.
Oh,
so
okay.
Maybe come at it from that perspective. So if a rebel spy was in charge of Tantus, I guess that's kind of what he's getting at.
I would not like that. I would because Tantus is supposed to be. Tantus is supposed to be like literally the most secretive. Like even the Bad Batch knowing about it or finding a way to it is a stretch. Like in my opinion, because this thing is supposed to be, and something that I do feel like my one critique with season 3 is at the beginning you get that really cool scene with Palpatine coming in and being like, you have the full might of the Empire, and he does nothing with that, or Hemlock does nothing with that full might. I don't understand why that base wasn't like, it seemed like there was like 30 people guarding that base. There should have been like battalions of people guarding the base, and like they can't.
Well, that's why the Zillow Beast was the perfect play. How do you defeat a Zillow Beast?
You can't. I don't think
exactly.
You can, right?
And so that's why Omega targeted it. And also, I think it doesn't make sense for Tantus guards to play offense, because then they become something that's traceable back to Tantus. And when the Bad Batch shows up to Tantus, they get their butts handed to them.
Yeah, I'm just saying, I think they could have done it. Like, I agree. I don't think there needs to be like a whole, like, I just think there should have been like, what would have been cool is like there is a battalion there, and then the Zillow Beast just arm swipes them or something like that, and then maybe that's why they're like. I feel like they didn't show the full might of the Empire as well as they could have. Is that was my really only critique. I don't think it should have been like, because I do think that Bad Batch had like they had their hurdles. Maybe there should have been a little bit more hurdles, because it is, like I said, this is arguably the most precious thing the Empire has going for it because Palpatine wants to live forever, right? Like that's what Project spoilers. If you guys don't know, that's what Project Necromancer is: Palpatine living forever and cloning himself with Omega's high M count midichlorians. So it's like I feel like there should be just a little bit more. Like I agree, Omega targeting the Zillo Beast, excellent move, super soldier like top tier move on her part. But I think there should have just been a little bit more shown there. Maybe that's an animation budget thing. I don't know, but
Sure.
What I feel like, or what I understood from that kind of interaction between Hemlock and Palpatine was more in the sense of like funds and more money and maybe like more participants to get experimented on rather than like security. But
Yeah,
that's fair.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, it obviously could be both because it was never specified, but that's kind of just where my head went. It never really went to like security force towards like funding the project.
No, I mean that's honestly I didn't even think about that. Yeah, he would probably put it more towards the science itself than the guards. I just think it's weird because like he was like I think Scorch is like he's like if you send the battalion because that is another thing Scorch did was like if you send the battalion after the Zillo Beast or the squad after the Zillo Beast, like we're not gonna have enough people here to like if anything happens here. And Hemlock's like I don't give a crap, go get to the Zillo Beast, you know. Which is like also a weird kind of move. Like I'm like, why wouldn't you want to go find Omega if she like escaped? If she hinges on everything, screw the Zillo Beast, go find Omega. But no, I think that's also a reason why there wasn't as many troops there too. Now that I'm thinking about it, kind of going back and playing the episode over in my head. Let's see, you guys are blowing up the chat. I really appreciate all you guys showing your love here. I'm trying to show all your comments.
That is true. But hey, I don't think Tanta's had any Kylos up their sleeve. I don't. No Skywalkers in sight. So.
Nope. A massive battalion would draw attention. See, but like I think the Empire, the space is. I don't think it would because like once that battalion's there, like they're never leaving. The only way that battalion leaves is if they die.
Right.
Like the Empire will literally kill them. And space is so vast and there's so many planets. I don't think like they're gonna have precautions around getting to like they were saying, like you have to like there's like one shuttle that goes to Tantus with supplies and stuff like that. You could have something similar to it, or I don't know. I think there's ways to explain it. I just think that there should have been like at least like they don't have to do anything, but I think it would have been important to show like a larger force there. Like I said, maybe they get wiped out by the Zillo Beast. Maybe they're going to chase after the Zillo Beast. But I would have liked to see more than like what seemed to me like 20 guards at the most important base that the Empire has. Again, there's ways around it. Like they spent more on the funding. He sent the people after the troopers after the Zillo Beast. There's definitely workarounds. It was more of a nitpick. That was just something that I would have liked to have seen. Would it not be for our Hemlock being overconfident with Tantus was so secret, which explains the lack of Imperial force? Yeah, I guess that is true too. He just maybe underestimated the bad, well, because like that's like the whole thing with the last episode is he's like clones are predictable, you know, and then it ends up being like kind of his downfall.
He even has that kind of conversation with Rampart when Rampart was in the cell. Rampart's like, well, now everyone's gonna know where this base is, and Hemlock kind of like brushes it off, saying like, I don't remember exactly what he said, but it was definitely along the lines of like, doesn't really matter, or it's not true, or something like that. So. He's definitely overconfident about it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that's
Omega is force sensitive.
Is she, or does she just have a high? I mean, I guess if you do have a high midichlorian count, you are force sensitive. I guess that would make sense.
I mean, Ventress said it.
Yeah, that is true. So. She did, didn't she? Well, that's the thing too. Is like you can have the tools, but if you don't know how to use the tools, then it's like it's useless. I kind of think it's like that with Omega. Like she wasn't brought up to be like a Jedi or anything like that. So it's like she has the capability, but and also too, kind of going back to was it season 2 of Mando when Ahsoka was talking about Grogu and being like, hey, just like keep him with you, and his abilities will wane over the years till they're basically non-existent. I think over time, like maybe your midi-chlorian, if you don't like utilize them, maybe they dip. Like we don't know because like midi-chlorians aren't really explored in Star Wars as much as they probably should be. But maybe it's something that like as you get older, if you don't, it's like working out. Like if you don't flex that muscle and build it, it's not going to grow. So maybe the Force is kind of similar in that regards.
Well, I think Luke says it it's either Luke or Ahsoka and Boba, but they say talent without training is nothing.
Yeah.
And so like if she like just because she spends an episode with Ventress doesn't mean that she's going to be, a Force god, Star Killer.
Well, that was another point I wanted to make with this show is like there's not as much hand holding. Like, like I know that was a big thing I saw online that people were arguing like, oh, we never found out if Omega was Force sensitive or not. And it's like, well, Ventress said it, and obviously she was trying to tap in. We could kind of feel it within Omega. Like, someone doesn't need to wield a lightsaber in order for us to be like, oh, they have the Force, like they're a Jedi, like they're Force sensitive. Like it's not always so black and white. There is a silver lining in between. And I feel like lately fans just they need everything just kind of
spelled out,
like spoon fed to them basically. And I'm like, it's not rocket science, guys. Like we know how Star Wars works and the logic of the Force and everything. I mean, people could argue on that, but that's a rabbit hole for another time.
Well, also, what else could M count mean other than midichlorians?
Exactly.
What else could that mean? Maybe they could explain something like later on down the line, but I feel like everything leads to like Palpatine like having contingencies on him dying, and like it just makes the most sense of midichlorians, Omega being infused with that. I like that they don't really explain how they infused it with her. I like kind of like some of the mystery with that. But going to the Stanleys, Thrawn's a whole different beast. Like you can't add that logic to like why somebody could figure out about Tantus. Like Thrawn, in my opinion, is probably one of the smartest people in Star Wars. Like, you can't really like give that as an excuse of why they would figure out.
Well, I think he's trying to argue his point from the previous one, saying people would have noticed the mass amount of troops being dispatched at Tantus. So he's saying Thrawn basically just figured out that the Death Star was being made by looking at the supply manifest. So, but I guess part of that would be you have to be looking for it.
Yeah.
So
also too, there's massive amounts of troops being dispersed across the galaxy because the Empire, like we see in Solo, like they're literally recruiting people to be sent to like Mimban and all these other to provide peace and prosperity. I feel like it'd be easier to fly. It's definitely there if you have the eyes for it, but I feel like it could fly under the radar.
So I'm reading the novelization of The Force Unleashed right now, and to kind of add on to what the Stanleys was saying, there is a moment where Juno Eclipse, and I don't remember this from the game, and it's been so long since I played the game, but there's a moment where Juno is like in the beginning of the book trying to figure out a little bit more about Starkiller, and she's like trying to figure out his past and like what his deal is and what Vader has him doing, and there's literally a moment where she literally just like taps in to the cameras in Vader's chambers and just watches a conversation with Starkiller and Vader, and she finds out about their plan to kill the Emperor.
Nuts.
And that's like how she discovered it. So that's not in the game, right?
No, that is 100% not in the game.
Because I don't remember that either, but I just remember reading that and being like, huh. Okay.
That's wild, dude.
It is Force Unleashed, so like logic is a little scarce in a book like that. But
dang, because I don't remember. Well, because she knows he's hunting Jedi, but like I don't think, and I know she knows that it's like in cahoots with Vader, but like I don't think it goes beyond that in the games. It's been like probably like a year or two since I've like played through the games fully, but yeah, no, that's wild that she like hacks into the mainframe to like see
basically. The writer his name's Sean Williams, and I really like how he writes Starkiller, but I think he added that to give Juno like some depth, because the rest of the story is her trying to figure out what her move's going to be. Is she going to stay loyal to the Emperor or stay loyal to who Vader assigned her to. And so like that is interesting. Just the way that it happened was, I was like, okay.
No, I'm with you on that one because I want to read that. I'm still trying to work through. Oh man, what is it? I'm blanking on which one I'm reading right now. Not important. I don't want to. But there's my point is there's a lot of audiobooks that I'm trying to get through, and that's one of the ones that I want to listen to.
Yeah, let me. If you guys have any good like Star Wars book recommendations, let me know because I look at computers all day for work. So like I'm trying to find ways to enjoy Star Wars without a screen, and books has been one of them. So
Heir to the Empire trilogy.
That one, Master and Apprentice. I will say with Heir to the Empire, Godspeed when they get to the Wookiees, because the dude talks in a really weird Wookiee accent, and it makes you want to claw your eyes out. But besides that, everything else is great. Love that story.
Okay.
It's just
but the Wookiees, they talk this like the whole time.
Ignore him.
No, I'm talking like physical book flipping the pages.
No,
Heir to the Empire. Yeah.
I don't read digital books. I read physical books. You're talking to a bookworm here. What are you?
I know, but you guys are talking about a Wookiee voice or whatever. I don't.
Yeah, see, I listen to.
audiobooks.
Yeah, I am uneducated, so I listen to the audiobook. Also, too, it's like listening to a movie because they had all the soundtracks and savers and stuff.
I listened to Plagueis on audiobook, and it was amazing. Yeah, it's so good.
Master and Apprentice is really good too with Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon.
I've read that one.
Yeah, that was good. I did like the one with I think it's Brotherhood. I believe with Anakin.
Yeah,
and that one's pretty good. That goes over. It's basically a book written by that one. He's like, that business on Cato de Moidia doesn't count. Like literally the whole book's on Cato de Moidia.
I own that book. I own that book. I got halfway through it, and then they introduced some political things that I was really not a fan of. So it made me stop reading it. We can talk about that later if you want. That's a whole separate conversation.
I'd be interested to hear what you have to say because it's been a minute.
It's the dumbest thing in the world. It is horrible. Yeah.
We'll talk about that off camera.
But we can talk about more. Yeah, let's because I only have a couple more questions and then we'll wrap this bad boy up. And dang, you guys are just going I feel like I have the chat like good. And then I'll like look back after it because I'm like paying attention to you guys. I'll look back and then it's just another like list of. I really appreciate you guys coming in here and hanging out with us, man. You guys are awesome. Ventress didn't test her blood. I think Hunter's Bad Batch powers makes him seem the most force sensitive. I think his can mimic the force because he can sense like electromagnetic waves, which kind of has some similarities to force sensitivity, but no, definitely Hunter wouldn't be. I mean, if Hunter had force sensitivity, I mean, I think he would have. And what is it, season 2, where he goes up against Cad Bane? He would have murked Cad Bane because his reflexes would have been there to get it. But it does, like and he says like the tracking, Quinlan's tracking. Like I said, I think it does mimic the force, but it's just electromagnetic waves. So I can kind of see where you're getting at with it, but yeah, I think it's
and I don't think Ventress needs to test her blood to know that either. Yeah. So,
well, it's like the same thing like when the Inquisitors are hunting, like Jedi, they don't test anybody's blood. They just kind of know. They like look, or even with no, they didn't do that. I was gonna say with Cal, but Cal kind of shows his lightsaber and she doesn't like know that it's him, but they still kind of sense. It's like game recognizes game almost. Like I know there is hiding force sensitivity. And like Plagueis and stuff like that, and Palpatine hides it from the Jedi, and there are instances of that too. But I think you can sense the Force within another Force individual if you're attuned to it.
Yeah, and I also have a theory that the giant squid that comes out of the water in the Ventress episode was not Ventress's doing. I think it was Omega's, because Ventress is surprised. Why would Ventress be surprised if she was trying to connect with animals and stuff like that during that episode? It was Omega.
Well, the only rebuttal to that I would say is I think she's surprised because I think she's just trying to summon like the fish like flowing, and then I think the fish flowing, she wasn't expecting like the Kraken to come out. But I do like that too, where like Omega kind of does it too. Like that is also another interesting.
Yours probably makes more sense, but yeah.
It's more like headcanon, like what you want to do with your headcanon. I don't think Omega is force sensitive. I think her blood can absorb midichlorians from the other blood, like Alice and the T virus. Wait, what? Like Alice and the T virus? Oh, from Resident Evil. That's why I didn't realize that. Because it's like, well, who's Alice in Star Wars? The Resident Evil franchises. Maybe. I mean, they kind of left it vague on. I feel like on purpose.
Yeah.
I'm honestly, whether she's force sensitive or not, to me personally, doesn't really make a difference. Like, I just like the fact that like they were able to somehow like clone something to have midichlorians, because that wasn't possible, and we still don't know. Like I said, like because they don't talk about really Project Necromancer. They don't talk about that. All they say is that she has the ability to hold an M count. We don't even know how much M count she has. She just has the potential to do it. But I mean, hey, I'm going to say this: if freaking Sabine can be force sensitive, I think Omega can be force sensitive. That's, you know, if we're going to go by Star Wars logic, because like Sabine, like it's said in Ahsoka, like all the time, that Hu Yang is like, you have like the least amount of ability I've ever seen in anything ever, and she's like pushing Ezra across a football field at the end of the at the end of the show. So I do think
you just have to believe in yourself.
Yeah, you just have to believe. Candy Mountain, Charlie. We gotta go to Candy Mountain. Sorry, intrusive thoughts. Cool to see the connection between Mando and Bad Batch trying to get both Grogu and Omega for midichlorians. Yeah, definitely. Palpatine like definitely doesn't have the same ideology as, like, for instance, like in Plagueis. Like Plagueis thought like cloning yourself was like abysmal. He just wanted to figure out how to like extend life. And Palpatine was like, screw that, man. If I can get myself cloned and force sensitivity, that's what I'm going to do. So it is interesting to see kind of like it flows really well. She could be force sensitive. I don't think she is yet. Oh, okay. Going back on your other.
I think Omega's force sensitivity isn't so much about her learning to use the force. I think it's more of a plot device for why she's valuable to the Empire.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I think that's like the crux for like why the Empire would want to capture her and bring her back and tell that story with the Bad Batch. I don't think it really has anything to like. She's not. I would hate this if she came back and had like a lightsaber and Jedi robes. Like, I don't think that's.
I don't see it happening. Yeah.
I'm going to skip down to the end real quick because Samuel says he's got to go. Hey, man, I appreciate you stopping by and talking and hanging out with us, my dude.
See you, man.
Bye, Sam.
Catch you on the flippity flip. And guys, I see all your comments. We are pushing like almost 2 hours, so I'm going to finish this up. And yeah, we'll. I appreciate you guys for talking and stuff like that. We'll be here forever reading all these comments. I do appreciate you guys talking about I see all the audio books talking about like Heir to the Empire and Plagueis and all that stuff. It's really awesome. I do want to highlight, man, that's a part of the reason why we do it. I'm glad you're liking these podcasts and talking. You know, it's great to talk with friends, and it's also great to give content for people who, you know, even if you have it on in the background while you're doing stuff. I can't tell you how many times I do that with stuff. So I'm glad we can be a part of your day, man. But the final thing I kind of want to talk about is that last scene. How do you guys feel about them kind of? We don't really have obviously a definitive of like when that takes place. I would guess sometime after A New Hope. I would, because the rebellion's real, and she's like, the rebellion needs pilots. But what did you guys think about seeing like an older Hunter and an aged up Omega and her wanting to join the rebellion?
Oh my gosh. I'll try not to get, well, thank God this is a week after the Bad Batch, because as soon as I saw that whole sequence, I was full on sobbing. And of course my family just always walks in when I'm sobbing, like when the credit sequence goes. I'm like, I have to lock the door at some point because they always walk in on me at those vulnerable points. But anyway, it was really like, again, I didn't realize how attached I was to these characters until that happened, and I felt something deep enough within my core to start crying. Because I mean, it doesn't take much to make me cry, but it's gotta be done right. is what I'm saying. And seeing like Omega older was like, whoa, like, okay, like where's she kind of at now? And then we see she's off to the rebellion. And then I wasn't emotional until we saw Hunter, and he was old, just kind of staring off. And he's like, oh, I know you're
like hunched over and stuff.
Like all hunched down. And I'm like, oh, like I never thought I would ever see the Bad Batch in that kind of shape or form, because we've seen them from when they were young and clones and everything.
We got the old clones, like they did Hunter justice because they look really crunchy, and Rebels, Rex, and all of them. I feel like they did justice with Hunter. He gets like kind of like the gray fox dad with like the beard and this hair slicked back, whereas like they look like they've been doing meth out in the canyons. So they did the old. Sorry, I just had to throw that in there. But they did the old clone version better.
You took the words right out of my mouth. So no, it was done beautifully and justice. Like I think the reason why that scene just kind of hit me so hard is because I mean, I'm not old, but I'm older. I'm not a kid anymore. And I've had a conversation like that at least once with both of my parents, especially now that I'm about to make a massive move across the country. They're like, okay, we know, like, yeah, we'll hunker down for a little bit, but like, we know you're going to go off and do your thing. And I said, yeah, but I'm not a kid anymore. I kid you not. It was like the same exact lines of the exchange with Omega and Hunter. And they're like, I was like, I'm not a kid. I'm a young adult and I'm capable of doing things. Like you saw me, like I was crazy enough to go on a Galaxy's Edge trip, hoping these people would show up. And thankfully they did. But they were like, yeah, but you're our kid. You will always be our kid till the day, you know, we're in a galaxy far, far away. So of course that just hit me so hard, but that just goes to show how powerful Star Wars is, and that these stories can connect with us in some shape or form, whether it's something personal or a story that you've heard from someone. That to me is what makes these shows and these stories so special. And it was just the perfect cherry on top for the Bad Batch and the perfect way to end this series, because again, it left that opening of, in spite of everything they were put through and all the odds were against them, they made it out. Hunter is finally able to rest, and Omega survived and lived to fight another day and fight for something bigger like the rebellion. And they're really just, I don't know what else more to say, but perfect ending, perfect conclusion. And it was just done beautifully.
I agree. For me, it was the last little bit that the finale needed. I was a little bit like, I don't want to say unsatisfied, because I enjoyed the finale like as an episode and all the action and stuff, but I didn't really want it, like when it cut to black and it kind of sat on black for a while, of them kind of like sitting by the tree on Pabu, I was like, there's something missing here. Like I really enjoyed this, but there needs to be one little thing at the end here. And then that epilogue came up, and it was just like the perfect bittersweet like goodbye. And yeah, it was really, really good to me.
For me, I mean, I would just probably say the same thing, but just to add a little bit to it, all the little details in the scene, like that ship was obviously built out of the Marauder, and just little stuff like that I really enjoyed.
I didn't notice that. That's cool.
Yeah, like you can, not a whole lot of it, but definitely that back canopy with like the gun is the same. And I'm sure if I looked at it more, there was more pieces of it, but yeah.
On my rewatch, I'm gonna pause and take a look at that. That's actually really cool. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna, because I was. This is interesting. I feel like Qui-Gon has going back to that blood thing real quick. And so Ventress should, and that should be. I think Star Wars has a lot of inconsistencies with that sort of stuff. I really think it's just like what you said. That's just my headcanon. I really think it is what your headcanon is, because sometimes like they can sense stuff, sometimes they can't sense stuff. Sometimes there's like, I really think it is like what you were saying. It is what your headcanon is at the end of the day.
I'm going to disagree with that because, well, just with his comment, because Qui-Gon, for one, has proper gear to scout out like Force sensitives. And then on top of that, like the reason he tested Anakin's blood was because he was insanely powerful and gifted. And he wanted to find out just how much on a like
That's
very
true.
specific level, where that's not what the Bad Batch asked Ventress. They were like, is she Force sensitive? And Ventress was like, yes. And I think that's all they needed to know. I think it's a different situation. And why would Ventress have that gear on her in the first place?
That's fair. That's fair. Because like I feel like every Jedi would at that time would have it, because they're always trying to, like, if they come across anybody who's Force sensitive, they can take them back to the temple and do that. So I feel like it would make more sense that Qui-Gon had it versus Ventress.
Because I guess with that logic, you would just be going around and taking blood from every kid you meet.
Get over here.
Right. Right. I guess with
big red bus.
Vampires.
Right. I guess with like Qui-Gon, he obviously like felt, sensed, and like observed Anakin doing stuff first to make him want to further the testing. Whereas Asajj did that same thing. She felt stuff with Omega, but she obviously just didn't have the abilities and the tools to actually test it. So she was just going off of that feeling.
Well, they also talk about it in the book that we mentioned earlier, Master and Apprentice, where like Dooku had like sent Qui-Gon to the archives to learn about the prophecies, and you can kind of see it in Qui-Gon's eyes when they're talking about like him having like the Force and being able to see things before they happen. He's like, and then like when the Shmi was talking to him about like, oh, there was no father. I became pregnant, I birthed him, I raised him. And you can even see in his face, he's like, interesting. Like, what's going on here? So I will say, I guess that that tracks. That tracks. I guess, well, here, let's because he's talking about this. I guess I need to rewatch it because I thought Ventress said Omega was not Force sensitive. And I thought about Qui-Gon already sensing Anakin before testing his blood after I made that comment. Oh, okay.
Ventress said something along the lines of, do you want me to tell you what you want to hear or what you don't want to hear?
Yeah.
And then Hunter said something, and she was like, what you want to hear is that she isn't. Because that would mean like, okay, the Empire's not going to be on your tail. But obviously the Empire's on her tail because she has midichlorians. So, yeah.
The Stanleys, I think it leans more towards that she is, but...
Ventress just answered the question in a opaque way. Like, it just wasn't like a very clear answer, but she definitely was saying yes. Yeah, Omega is Force sensitive.
And the final question I want to ask you guys is, we don't have any new, and we just got Tales of the Empire. We have nothing new as far as animation goes, slated for next year, or I'm sure there will be. But what do you guys, not what you think is going to happen, but what would you guys personally like to see, like, the next animation project be?
I want to see something with Rex, Wolf, Cody, and Gregor, or I want to see a actually good sequel trilogy animated show.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Like, what? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you can finish up with Wes.
I was just gonna say, like, what would you want to, like, if we were to go down the route of the sequels, like, what would you want it to focus on?
I don't really care. I just feel like I want good content in that era, because it is a canon era in Star Wars, and I think a lot of people neglect it, including myself. I mean, it is just like the weakest part of Star Wars. Like, let's be real. So I think something along the lines of a Clone Wars to the sequel trilogy would be really helpful. But there is another side of me that's like, the prequel trilogy is actually a really great story. Yeah. So the Clone Wars only aids to the foundation, whereas the sequels is, and I know Michael's in this chat, so I'll be light, but like where the sequels, I am a Kylo fan. 100%. But the sequels as a story suck. And so there's not a there's not a like firm foundation for a Clone Wars S story. I just want something to really, really like story-wise from that era. Kylo is the only thing that like ever makes me feel like I want to rewatch those movies. So that's it. And honestly, like, because there's just so much untapped. There's just so much untapped story with the sequel era, because the sequel era is literally 2 years in the entire timeline of the Star Wars story, because The Force Awakens is not that long, and then The Last Jedi is right after The Force Awakens, and then there's a year between The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker. So the sequel trilogy is at most like 2 or 3 years, depending on how much time passed between The Force Awakens through The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
So like there's just so much that can be done in that time, and especially with a 30-year jump between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, like there's just a lot of open air that something can fill.
Fair enough, man. Fair enough. Nick, you were hopping in.
I was basically going to just say the same thing, is just kind of add to it. I can't remember like once we finished Bad Batch on the 4th. My friend and I were kind of just discussing like what we also wanted to see, because as of right now, there's no animation announced yet, and I'm sure they'll be doing another Tales in like 2 years again, because I think that's how the other two were spaced out. But in terms of like a full-length story, I would love to see a show centered around like Rex and Echo, and continuing on Pantora and seeing more of
Clone Rebellion.
seeing more Senator Chuchi and what she's doing with on the political side of stuff. Because I feel like that was something that made Clone Wars more interesting, rather than just seeing battle after battle, war after war, where those were cool, like especially like the Umbara arc. It's one of my favorite ones. I feel like a lot of the political ones too gave more insight into the war itself too. So I feel like seeing that side of things, but in the Imperial era, would be beneficial to the story as well. And like Wes said, I think Star Wars as a fandom would benefit from a solid sequel era show. I think one in between like 8 and 9 would be good, seeing them set up on Agent Kloss, because they're basically all the Resistance members are piled into the Millennium Falcon, but how do they get to the bigger base, and how do they freaking get a Corellian cruiser and stuff like that? Like that, I feel like could be interesting.
Do you guys subscribe to Eckhart's Ladder?
Yes,
you know
I do.
I just recently did.
He is a great channel, and I watched a video from him recently talking about why the Battle of Exegol makes zero sense. And like it completely changed. Not that I loved that battle, but it like made me dislike it like quite a bit. And one of the major things was talking about how the sheer amount of Resistance ships that show up at the end, and they really kind of cut to it quickly in the movie, but he pauses on that scene for just a second and is like analyzing all the ships that end up showing up, and it's like, why would any of these people have any interest in coming out here after they straight up just said no in The Last Jedi?
Oh, that's so true.
Something set between 8 and 9 would really like help. And I did read a book before Episode 9 came out called I think it's not Rise of Resistance. Resistance Reborn is what it's called, and it's supposed to be about how the Resistance kind of rebuilds after Episode 8. It was not a good book. It was so boring.
I've heard, yeah.
But I think that story done properly would be really helpful.
Because I think it would get the same kind of treatment Clone Wars did, where Clone Wars was in between the second and third installment of that trilogy too. So I feel like that era or time period or between those films is where you can get the most amount of information from.
I feel like it just has to, like, you got one shot with the show. Like, there's already so much division.
Yeah.
like you would have to like really, because like you're gonna get people coming in who like
hate it.
despise.
Yeah.
So like you have to like win that, not only like win over like the regular people, but you have to win over like the people who are gonna like actually take to like Twitter and all those like troglodytes who just complain about everything.
Yeah, but I mean, here's my thing is like, if you actually make it good, then the people who are going to hate regardless don't have any ground to stand on.
yeah,
And you know, I think that even I am not in like by any means like an obnoxious sequel hater. I wouldn't even say I hate the sequels. I just don't really like them that much. But the people that are obnoxious about it, you really like you can critique their attitude, but you can't critique their opinions, because I don't particularly disagree with their opinions. But if a show is objectively good and it fulfills a point and a theme with good characters, they don't have anything to kind of be mad about besides the fact that it takes place in an era with other movies they don't like. And that's not a valid opinion.
Yeah, Percy, the Resistance was, but I think that was really like that's not on the same level of storytelling that like Rebels or Clone Wars. I think that was aimed more towards like littler kids,
younger
like,
audience, for sure.
like having like a Clone Wars style audience, or like showing it to like you know, like older people, I guess, like having it set for that's your demographic, I think would probably age better than like Resistance would.
Here's my beef with Resistance though, is I watched 2 episodes with a friend, like jokingly, of the Young Jedi Adventure show, and enjoyed that significantly more than Star Wars Resistance.
Oh, okay.
And that
that
is aimed at an even younger audience than Resistance, and I had way more fun with it. I mean, they had like grease aliens in like cantinas and stuff, and it's like I would never like watch that entire series, but just the fact that it's aimed at a younger audience and I had way more fun with it than Resistance. I don't know. And Kylo's in Resistance, and I don't even care to stick around and finish that show for Kylo. So that's
isn't there also like a gold trooper that's like kind of like Captain Phasma, but not really? Like I mean the armor looks sick, but yeah, like I don't know.
It's a reskin.
But Sarah, what would you want for the next animated show?
My answer is going to be completely opposite. I mean, as much as I would love to see Rex and everyone, I mean, I'm still for that, those characters. But my big thing at the moment, and no, it's not Cal Kestis related.
Yes.
Shocker, I know. But the show I would love to see, or a show I would love to see animated around a specific era, is the Old Republic era. And I cannot express this enough. If Star Wars, like if the company were to come to me and be like, we need you to write some kind of story around this era, yes, 100%, I would be all for it, because I am so intrigued with that era, because I know everyone is saying, hi JT, like the High Republic is technically the prime of the Jedi. I kind of disagree with that, because I'm like, nah. It's the Old Republic, guys. And if you've played the games, you've kind of followed that throughout the years, like those. And I've done so much research on it for my own book at the moment. So just from the research alone, playing the games and kind of seeing the clips and everything that they've given us, I'm like, yo, this would just redeem like all the hate that people had with the sequels, if it's done correctly, of course, because of course they could do something with that and just totally butcher it, and then I would really hate it. But I want to see that era specifically, because there's so many characters in there where, yes, we kind of know where their stories kind of went. It's considered legends now. Like the Old Republic is like legends now. It's not canon. It's not Star Wars canon anymore. Yeah. So if they make it canon, maybe they can still kind of use that content, maybe expand on it or add something to it, and just really give us some unanswered questions with how we led up to the High Republic, because I mean, I've never read any of the High Republic books. I'm not too familiar with that. The only glimpse I got from it was Jedi Survivor, and that was it. But I just really feel like that era is so slept on.
Yeah.
And not enough people talk about it. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've talked to some people about them. They're like, yeah, I played the games a little bit, but they're not like as knowledgeable, I guess, as the rabbit hole I've kind of dived deep into it as I have. So it would just be cool to kind of finally spark those kind of conversations up again and just kind of see what they can do with that era. Because I mean, I'm all about the Jedi. I love the Jedi. Like, when it comes to Star Wars, like, I am 100% all invested into that. I mean, obviously I'm open to other ideas too, like with the clones and Rebels, whatever you want to do, but that's personally what I would love to pitch in if Disney was like, yeah, we need something new.
You just imagine getting like Clone Wars animation, but like the level of detail that like those Old Republic cinematics were. Like that would be. I mean, I'm not saying the whole show has to be that, but like when there is combat in the show, because like there's always combat in shows, like having that level of combat, seeing that, because that really you can only really do that in animation. Like the amount, like human bodies don't really work like that, even if you got wires and stuff like that. Like it's wild the stuff that they do in those cinematics, but like to that level, because like I you know, like what JT said, like it's like, the Old Republic is the height of the Sith. Like it's honestly both. Like there's so many powerful force use, and so much knowledge also gets lost during that time period. Like they have like Sith artifacts and like the catacombs and stuff. Like if any of you guys have played like the Old Republic game, you were saying like the games, like the Knights of the Old Republic, and then the Star Wars, the Old Republic, the MMO. Like, there's so much lore and stuff that they could add.
Well, plus that was one more thing I wanted to add was the combat was so different compared to the Jedi of Obi-Wan and Anakin their time, because their combat was a specific style. It was more focused on battle, like focusing on how to take down battle droids, because that's what they were fighting during that era. Whereas in the Old Republic, it was literally the Jedi versus the Sith, and they were getting their butts whooped. Like the Jedi were literally on the brink of extinction. That's how powerful and how peak of the height of the Sith were in terms of power.
Oh, they destroyed the Jedi Temple.
Well, yeah, you see like massive. So and the reason why they made it out was because they focused on hand-to-hand combat with the sabers. They're like, oh, like we gotta like change it up here a bit. And whereas where we see it later with Anakin and all of them, they kind of lose their way with that and their knowledge, because, you know, they get more involved in politics and again, just focusing on battle droids, not thinking the Sith are going to return, because the Sith have been extinct for a millennia. You know, they were ignorant to that. So I would just be over the moon to see the Old Republic finally get the spotlight it deserves. So yeah, I'll stop going on my tangent now.
No, that's awesome, dude. I'm on board with you. I think the Old Republic I think the reason why they're hesitant with that is because it's either like you don't know anything about it, or like you're a sweaty about it, like the Old Republic. And there's a lot of sweaties. Like that's like always that joke of like, oh, do you even know who Revan is? Like when people are like posers, or like people think they're like Star Wars, but like that's like the joke is like, oh, do you even know who Revan is? Like, you know, like that's like I want to get a T-shirt that says that, because I think that's the funniest.
That'd be hilarious.
Just the funniest freaking, like, out of everything to pick in Star Wars knowledge, like that's the one that, I mean, Revan's cool. Don't get me wrong. I'm not crapping on Revan. It's funny that's what the go-to thing is. But I'm gonna give mine, because I have a couple too that haven't been said, so I wanted to give mine. I think my main answer is kind of like Sarah's, something that's not tied into the 1 through 9. I kind of want to move away. That's why I'm excited for the Acolyte, because it's kind of something new, even if it is only like 100 years before. I think it's 100 years before Phantom Menace, or is it 200?
200.
I think it's
200. Yeah, so it's still roughly like but it's still, you know, tied to that. Like I would love to see the Mandalorian versus Jedi, like those wars. And make it almost like the animated style, but doing it like Game of Thrones. You know how they're like very strategical. Like you'd maybe not follow one person. Like there's not very much that has like been said or told about that. So I feel like there's not really ways to like. I mean, there's always ways to get people irritated, but there's less, because there's not a whole bunch of of knowledge. And also, who doesn't want to see Mandalorians fighting Jedi? Like that sounds like the coolest freaking thing.
So
I mean,
so are you? But here's my thing: is are you sure you would want to see something like that in animation? Because I think live action would be the way to go to that.
I mean, honestly, either. I'd be
Okay.
fine. I'd be fine with either.
Yeah.
Like I'm not. I would just want to see it, to be honest with you. But
Dude, I'm right there with you. That I would. Oh my gosh, that's a great idea.
But I will say,
I feel like. Oh, sorry.
oh, I was just gonna say, I feel like you can do more in animation. So I think you could have some cooler combat scenes with that. So maybe I do lean a little bit more towards animation, just for the fighting. But I would, if they were like, "Hey, we're doing live action," I'd be just as excited as an animation. But go ahead, Nick.
I was gonna say, and you mentioned like well, I was just saying it could possibly connect to what we have seen, because they could probably introduce like Tar Vizsla and stuff into that kind of story.
Yeah.
And we can actually see the creation of the Darksaber, which would link right to the Mandalorian. So it would be in line. So I feel like people would see that and go like, "Oh, this I saw Mandalorian. Let's see where this ancient weapon came from."
There's so much that they could do, because they could even do like, I feel like the hyperspace wars, like with them setting up like hyperspace lanes, could be intriguing. And then I think we're gonna get in Dawn of the Jedi. But I always thought it would be an interesting way to see like sabers that were like almost like swords, but they were imbued with like force sensitivity, or they even had like the proto backpacks that like power the sabers.
Proto sabers, yeah.
I feel like that could also be something. Maybe they'll do that with Dawn of the Jedi, so like we don't need that in animation, but that would also be kind of cool. And then my answer for having something like in universe, either, I know we got the OT, but I just want to see Luke doing badass stuff. So like something set between Empire, because like if you look at Luke in Empire Strikes Back and you look at him in Return of the Jedi, he's like a totally different person.
Oh yeah.
And I would kind of like to see like what kind of, like, it feels like almost like a light switch, you know, like he like turns into like more, like he's not a Jedi master at that point, but he definitely has more of that vibe. And maybe I'd like to see some things that, like, I don't know, maybe he tangles with Vader again, maybe Boba Fett shows, like, I don't know, something, or a mall show that shows him with his syndicates, and it could just go right after he leaves the shuttle with Ahsoka, because obviously Darth Maul's my boy. So but either all right,
Max wins. Max definitely had the best ideas.
Yeah,
like,
it's not even basic.
To be fair, I had the confidence, so I could think about it a little longer than you guys. So I'm gonna say like mine's kind of cheating, because I was thinking about it all day long. So, honestly, I'm okay with any of the stuff. Like I wouldn't be mad with. I'm not gonna lie. It would the sequel stuff, while I agree with what you're saying, would interest me the least out of everything that was said. But I do think that there is a possibility to maybe have something kind of connect to where it might not. I don't think anything's going to fix the sequels and some of the issues that they have, but it could. I don't know what the analogy would be. Maybe put like a Band-Aid over some of the wounds that have been created.
My thing, I mean, honestly, everyone had better or things I'd rather see than a sequel trilogy show. My kind of approach with it is just the fact of I know people that don't like the prequels but love Clone Wars. And so like I would love something like that for the sequels. Something to kind of bridge the gap for myself, to be like, you know what? I'm not a fan of these movies, but this show that kind of loosely connects with them, I really dig, and I'm about it. And so I would like something like that to kind of even the playing field when it comes for my love of Star Wars across the board.
No, I think that's totally fair, and that's why I like. That's why I was like, I think I agree with you, like on that front, like because I mean, I think I may have mentioned the sequel trilogy and like actually talked about it like I probably less than 10 times on my channel, you know. So I do feel you like having something from that era that's like actually like you're excited about and like jazzed about would be nice. So I do feel that. But yeah, guys, I mean, dude, we've been talking for 2 hours and 13 minutes. It's been wide. It's a lot longer than I thought we were gonna go on talking, and we did divert a little bit from Bad Batch and stuff like that. But no, it's been great. I've been really enjoying this, and I really appreciate, again, like I know I've said it over and over again, but like you guys in the chat just blowing it up, hanging out with us, just nerding out and having fun. I did want to highlight a couple of things just because I thought this was a cool premise, having Plo Koon and like a Wookiee master. Like, I don't really know much about Plo Koon's history before, but like that seems kind of really cool. Dooku in his prime. That's one of my favorite things in animation is the Dooku arc. I would love seeing him, like a younger Dooku, being trained by Yoda. Super epic. And then I haven't read JT's, so I don't know if it's sarcastic or if it's. Because sometimes I feel like I want an animated show called Origins and animate will begin with a character story with a sweaty background. What does that mean? Sweaty background? Is he like physically sweaty, or is it like Star Wars sweaty? Commoners get to see something like Grievous pre-suit, etc.
I see what you're saying.
Okay.
Dude, Grievous as a Kaleesh warrior would be a pretty sick thing. But like again, too, it's cool, but I think we said that kind of earlier. Like sometimes you got to decipher what's cool and like what like could kind of like almost like we were talking about it in Tales of the Empire. Like I agree with Liam Neeson when he says like some of these stories like don't necessarily need to be told because it loses some of the magic. So it would be cool to see Grievous pre-suit with the clans, but I don't know if that would either give him more to Grievous. Maybe it would give it more to Grievous. I don't know, because I feel like Grievous kind of gets shafted in 3 a little bit. Like we don't get to see as much of him as like the 2003 Clone Wars. But no, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be angry with the Kaleesh look really cool with the tusks and I actually I don't know where the figure is, but I actually have a pre-suit Grievous with the mask and all that stuff that we see. But yeah, man, that'd be sick. But yeah, I mean, I think that's, unless you guys have anything else to add, I think that's probably where we're gonna end it.
Sweet. Thanks for having us on, man.
Yeah. Thank you.
Likewise, guys, I have all their information down below. Go support Wes and Sarah's YouTube. Nick doesn't have one. We're trying to peer pressure him into getting one.
I don't have the time for
Nick.
that.
I know, I understand. But definitely go check out all the Instagrams. I have Linktrees, all that stuff. They make awesome content, and they're just as cool. So why not go check them out? What do you have to lose? More Star Wars content? Like, come on, right? Like, but thank you guys for watching and hanging out with us. I don't know what I have planned next for the YouTube, but we'll figure it out. And with that, thank you guys for watching, and may the Force be with you. Bye.